Morning again, everybody. Welcome to FAFSA Ready Training. This is the walkthrough for TAP and DREAM Act. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to open that question and answer panel, that Q&A panel, and ask any questions there. I use that to kind of formulate those frequently asked questions on our site. So please feel free to do that. The chat is also available. I'll be dropping some different links to different places on our site that might give you some information and resources in the chat. So have that open. My name is Jeff. I'm the training manager at HESC, and I'm going to be taking you through the entire DREAM Act eligibility application and TAP application today, and then have some time for questions afterwards. So as we start off, we're going to start off with reviewing the changes to TAP, as there were some changes to TAP last year, and then we're going to discuss the two pathways to apply for TAP. From there, we'll explain the DREAM Act portal and application, and then review the New York State TAP application as a whole. Before we get into it, there's some brand new guidance out. Some of you may be aware that there was some guidance put out where mixed status families who have had some things to think about as they debate applying for financial aid. We released this guidance to help students and families make that decision and form their thoughts. This has some key considerations, key points to consider. It also has some next steps that students can take right now. Like, what are the things that students can do right now to gain more information and see what's out there for mixed status families? For you that don't know, mixed status families are those families who, where the student is a is a resident or the student is a citizen, and the parents may or spouses may have different considerations and may not have a social security number. So that's what we're talking about here. So we have some guidance. Feel free to click that link and get to that page. Once you do so, actually, can I see if I can? Actually, this new presentation isn't up yet, so this link won't be live yet. I can put it in the chat afterwards. But this is where you can go for any new information. So as information comes available, as new things come up, we're going to add to this site with new guidance, new ask questions, new steps you can take. So please make sure to bookmark that. If you send it to students, have them bookmark it if they're interested in hearing more about what's going on with those mixed status families, if that pertains to them. Now, some changes to TAP. So we just got a chance to celebrate 50 years of TAP. So we've been around since 1974 doing the TAP program. $30 billion of aid has gone to 6 million different New York students to help really just make college more affordable and accessible to them. That's the whole point. Like, we help you pay for college so that you can afford it. Right, it's expensive. We had two really big wins last year when it comes to awards. The first one was the award range. So we were able to increase our minimum award. Our minimum award used to be $500, which was $250 per semester. We were able to increase that to $1,000 a year, which is $500 per semester, which is a really big win, up to $5,665, which is the full cost of tuition at a SUNY or CUNY school. All right. Another really big win for HESC and for students last year was the income limit ranges. We've been working really hard with legislators trying to update that and fix that. Last year, the income limit range went from $10,000 at the lowest for independent students. That went to $30,000 is the lowest now, and then up to $125,000 for dependent students, right? So independent students can make up to $30,000 and receive aid. Dependent students can make up to, and their families can make up to $125,000 and receive aid. Really big win. We actually ended up having almost 100,000 newly eligible students because of this income limit range increase. So once again, really big win for students, a really big win for HESC and colleges to make it more affordable. Now for our current TAP, we're open now, right? So it's open now, FAFSA is open now. You can go ahead and apply. The DREAM Act eligibility application for those students is always open, right? So the DREAM Act eligibility application, we'll talk about that in a little bit, is the gateway to get into New York State grants and scholarships for those students who are not able to file a FAFSA. And that eligibility application is always open. And then you'll have to look at, students will have to look at when those specific grants and scholarship applications open to go back into the DREAM Act portal and apply. FAFSA had a slight policy change this year or last year, where it went away from the parent model and made them contributors. This allowed them to do some different things. So we have a whole training on FAFSA, so I won't go too much into it, but the way that they pick what parent goes into FAFSA, it depends on how much support that parent gives. New York State has not changed what parent should be on the TAP application. We still go by the custodial parent. So the parents are divorced of the student, whoever the custodial parent is, whether they make more money or less money, doesn't matter. We need the custodial parent, whoever's on that divorce document as the custodial parent, to be the person that is on the application. All right. And we continue other adjustments for families and members in college full time. So those haven't changed for us at all. Now, I mentioned there's two pathways to TAP. The first is the traditional pathway. This is for students who meet citizenship requirements. The other pathway we have is our Dream Act pathway. Both pathways can get you into TAP, but they're just used by different people. The traditional pathway is for those students that can file the FAFSA. This is for most students who meet the citizenship requirements. Notice how I said most, not all students who meet citizenship requirements for federal aid, because some of those students aren't eligible for traditional TAP, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Back again this year, FAFSA is required to complete the TAP application. So we're requiring that students fill out the FAFSA first and then fill out the TAP application, whereas last year students were able to fill out the TAP first because of the disconnect with the FAFSA application opening up later than usual. Little bit different this year as well is that contributor link at the end. I know a lot of students have been missing that link or not seeing that link. That's because if the student starts their FAFSA first before the contributor is able to do their thing, the application isn't technically submitted, so there won't be a link that populates. But if the contributor goes in first, does their thing, and then invites the student to finish off, then the student will be able to see that link at the end and head to the traditional TAP application. The other pathway we have is the Dream Act pathway. So this pathway is for some applicants who do not meet the citizenship requirements to fill out FAFSA. Apologies. It's also a pathway for some students who can fill out the FAFSA, but New York State is no longer the state of legal residence. Now, these are some students who, in their senior year, their parents may have decided to move to a different city, different state. So they moved to Georgia, or maybe their freshman year of college. The parents may have moved, and because of that, now New York State is no longer the state of legal residence. So those students still have the ability to stay in New York State and attend school in New York State through the Dream Act. So we're going to break down the whole Dream Act eligibility pathway. This is something we get a lot of questions on, like what do I do? How does this work? How do I get verified? So we're going to break down this eligibility pathway. Once again, this pathway is open all year round to get into the Dream Act. And then once the Dream Act is open to that student and they're eligible and approved for the Dream Act, they will fill out all applications during their normal slots through this portal. They will not need a HESC PIN to do that. So the pathway for the students, these are like DACA students, undocumented students, students that are not eligible for federal aid. Students must meet New York State Dream Act requirements. For some of you down here that are like maybe high school counselors, or this is mostly for you guys, there's no delineation of reporting from Dream Act students to TAP students. So we've got asked questions sometimes like, can we see the Dream Act students versus the TAP students, or who's filled out a Dream Act application versus TAP application? No, we don't have that capability. We group them together on purpose so that there's no distinction between Dream Act students or traditional TAP file, traditional FAFSA filers. Okay. For more information, HESC.gov/streams where you can find this. We also have a brand new video resource as a total walkthrough of the eligibility application on our FAFSA Ready training page. That link is in the old presentation as well, so you'll see that there. And then students will be able to go through that. You can be able to help students with their eligibility application through that video as well. The first step is that in that eligibility applications is to hit what level of study they're doing. So the level of study is usually undergraduate study for these students and when they'll enroll. And then the school year that you're looking for aid for. Now, the school year you're looking for aid for will be for 25, 26 for those incoming students. I did have a question come in just now about Dream Act students that have to fill out the FAFSA. The Dream Act eligibility application is only for students that, well, is mostly for students who cannot fill the FAFSA out. right? So they won't need to fill the FAFSA out to fill out the DREAM Act. So that's not a requirement for them. For those students that are U.S. citizens and are filling out the DREAM Act because their parents are outside of New York State and they meet the educational requirements, for those students, they'll still fill out the DREAM Act, the FAFSA first, and then fill out the DREAM Act. But for most of the DREAM Act students, they will not need to fill out the FAFSA at all because they won't meet the requirements. All right. So the answer information here, glad, no, perfect. Glad I answered your question, Emma. They will get information on the high school graduation status here as well. Okay. There are some education requirements for these students, right? So we talk about citizenship, we'll talk about that a little bit more concrete in a second. But in order to be eligible for the DREAM Act, students must have graduated from a New York State high school, having attended for 2 or more years, right? So that is your full junior year and the student's full senior year. That's the eligibility requirement for that. Now, if it's halfway through junior year, and they just got there and they won't have 2 full years, there's another pathway they can use here as well. The other one is to hold a New York State equivalency diploma. So if they're brand new and they hold a New York State equivalency diploma, they can be eligible for the DREAM Act. That last one, being charged in-state tuition at a SUNY or CUNY for reasons other than residency, is another reason that they can get the DREAM Act. So I got a question last time that, hey, like I have students that's, they've been here for their senior year, maybe half of the junior year and the senior year. They're getting a high school diploma. They don't want to do an equivalency. What is the route for them? If they attend a SUNY or CUNY and get charged in-state tuition, they can apply for the DREAM Act. The only issue is that they won't be able to do it right away, right? So they would have to wait until they actually get into that SUNY or CUNY, do all their stuff, get admitted, be charged in tuition, and then put that into the DREAM Act application, then be approved, and then do TAP after that. So it's a bit of a longer process for those students, but that gateway is still open through that in-state tuition for those students, all right? So continuing on the pre-eligibility application, they're going to ask for some citizenship requirements. Now, based on the citizenship stats that students indicate, they will have to enter documentation later on in the application, and I'll show you guys that. This is really important. The citizenship status that they pick, it's like a T or U visa, temporary protected status, deferred action for childhood arrival, those DACA students without lawful immigration status. That could be students that are also pending immigration status, and then those U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens whose permanent home is outside of New York State. So those are the citizenship requirements. Those are the requirements for citizenship for students entering the DREAM Act. They'll enter all that information in, and when they hit submit in that pre-application, they have to understand that they can't go back to that first page again. Once they hit submit, that first page stays there until it's done and processed. After it's processed, they can go back. All right. So moving forward into the rest of the application, students will begin by entering their personal information, right? Their name. They should really make sure to enter their name in like it appears on their high school transcripts or high school records, because the name that they put here is the name we're going to send to SED to verify high school graduation status should they choose automatic verification. So a lot of times students will put a different name or they go by a different name on the high school transcripts for whatever reason. If students enter a different name, there won't be a match and they'll be asked to manually verify. And that process takes a little bit more time too. It can make it a little more cumbersome for the student. Another thing we ask is the date of birth. So make sure they're paying attention to how they put the date of birth in. We recognize that some students, are used to putting in dates differently, but we ask for a certain format here. And then we'll also ask for things like their permanent mailing address and things like that. Students can opt for notifications to phone, so they should enter that there. And then students will select grade level and things like that. This will have no bearing on their actual eligibility, but it's some information that we need here. Now, continuing on, high school verification. This is where that name is really important, because if they enter a different name and they enter automatic verification, and we miss them, they'll need manual verification. They have to enter the high school. And if they know the high school ID, they should enter that as well, because we can use that to help mitigate some of that. And they can enter if they have if they're part of any of these programs, EOP, SEOP, HEOP, sorry, SEEK, Scholarship for Academic Excellence. They enter that there as well. Now, if a student opts for automatic, we do a file transfer with SED, State Education Department, and we say, hey, this is the kid, this is the school, Are they present? Are they going to graduate? And SED will say yes or no or can't find them. If they can't find them, and maybe just the name, and then they can go back in after this processes and change their name and update their name to reflect what's on the high school records. If we can't verify them through high school records, they have to manually verify. And to manually verify, we need a high school transcript with the date listed, with the graduation date listed. Let me say, Jeff, how am I gonna get that? I don't have that yet. We know, right? And this is the hiccup, is that we need this to verify your high school graduation for eligibility into this Dream Act portal. But you'll have to wait until April, May, or June, whenever that last transcript comes out with your graduation date listed. So students should be aware, should they select manual, they won't be approved for the Dream Act as quickly, and they'll have to wait. Students can select automatic and then still, manually verify if it's taking a long time, but they'll need that graduation date on the transcript. We can't accept just a regular transcript without that graduation date listed. So once they've entered all their information in, a list will populate with supporting documents. What documents we'll need from them to support their citizenship status, high school graduation, whatever it may be. The application will not process until all documents have been uploaded to the student's application. So they can leave this application right here if they have to get documents, and it'll be saved forever, right? Until they come back in and upload those documents, it'll just sit there, right? So students have to be aware, just because it's in doesn't mean it's just because they've done all this up to this point doesn't mean we have anything, we can do anything about it. We need the proof of citizenship and any of the documentation that was requested through the application. Continuing on, there should be here any approval, right, for Dream Act, right? So if they get Dream Act approval, they'll get an email saying, hey, been approved for Dream Act, come back in and apply for whatever you need to apply for. I see another question here, whether there was a projected graduation date listed on the transcript. That might suffice, right? So as long as the graduation date listed, that's fine for me, right? That's fine for us, right? So there has to be a date listed for graduation there, though. Okay. Good question. They will get an email saying that their application has been approved and that the student can come back in and add new applications. So you'll see here there's an add new application portion. They can then apply for TAP or Excelsior, STEM, ETA, any one of our other programs. They can apply through this portal. They will not leave the HESC PIN. They'll do all their activities through here. We have some additional resources here. So there is a Dream Act website that we have available that you guys can head to and give your students for more information. I'll put that in the chat right now. We also have some an eligibility walkthrough and an eligibility quick tips for students that they can use and you can use with students to help them with the Dream Act. We have a lot more Dream Act resources coming, specifically about changes to their applications, changes to colleges and stuff like that to the Dream Act. We are making resources for that, and those will be available in the next few weeks. All right. So allow us to move forward to the TAP application. All right, the TAP application hasn't changed much, or if at all, since its inception. We updated some graphics, we updated some, cosmetic stuff, but it hasn't changed in its essence. So as we go through this, I'll talk about a HESC PIN, how to create that, and some things to look out for. And then I'll really talk about a lot of the pain points that students face, some of the things they mess up often, those common mistakes. I'll talk about those and how to mitigate those for your students. The first thing the students will need is a HESC PIN. So they don't have that, they'll have to hit that first time user click here and register a HESC PIN. Now they'll need to add some information. I'm gonna say this all the time, make sure the information is accurate. Make sure they know exactly what they're putting in here. I've had students and parents reach out to me saying, I put my date of birth in wrong. What do I do now? I put the wrong social security number. What do I do now? Right? So I've seen it often. So make sure as you're working with students that they have, if not the birth certificate or the picture of it, something that they know what their birthday is, something where they know SSN. And it's not like, oh, I've just messed up by one digit, like totally wrong month, totally wrong year. Like I'm talking about like a whole different day, whole different year. So make sure they're entering that information correctly into their HESC PIN account, because they won't be able to change in the application. And you'll see it when they enter in the application, that date of birth will be grayed out. So they'll have to make sure it's accurate from the get-go. Now we can verify identity a couple of different ways for the HESC PIN. The first one is a DMV issued license, right? ID. If they have one of those, they can enter that there and add their ID number, and we can use that to verify. Now, to be honest with you, I didn't get my license when I was 22, so I didn't have that. So what I used was my high school graduation, my high school. So I used my high school to verify my identity using my high school, the high school ID number, and I confirmed my high school ID number. For some students that may be in a smaller school, they may not have their ID number or know it offhand. They can skip both of those steps and be verified through the FAFSA. So they skip the New York State ID and they skip the high school identity verification. They can then be subject to FAFSA identity verification. And then once we get their FAFSA records, we'll be able to tie it to their TAP application and move forward. Okay. The rest of this is like when you create a regular account, you got to enter your email address and secondary email address and challenge questions should you forget your password. So make sure to enter that information in appropriately. And then I'll have to create a user ID. Now there's some rules there to create a user ID. Students should know they'll have 3 chances to create that user ID. If they don't create it in 3 chances, then the system will create a user ID for them that they can use through the duration. The same thing is true with the PIN. So with a PIN number, can't be their birthday, but there's certain rules they have to use to create a PIN number. We don't use passwords, we use PINs. And that PIN number, they'll have 3 chances to create one. And if they don't create one in 3 chances, the system will generate a PIN number for them. They should just make sure to write this down, right? If they need assistance with HESC PIN or their HESC PIN is not able to be verified, or their HESC account's not able to be verified, their HESC account has locked them out, they'll need to contact the call center at HESC.ny.gov/get help, and they'll be able to schedule an appointment with our call center. Now, our call center only works by appointment just because of the large amount of calls that we were getting. We weren't able to take them all, and students were on the line for hours or being dropped. So quite a long time ago, before I got here, we went to appointments where students will have to sign up in advance just to make sure we can get all the students that need help, the help they need. Okay. Then we'll finish up with doing some security questions, right? So this is a security incident email. So if there's ever an incident with security on HESC part, we'll be able to email you guys if there's anything, so you can accept that. And then there's an email notification for like a mailing list. If you want to be a part of that, subscribe to the mailing list, you can get that as well. Once that's all done, the student can move forward and get into the application. They should start by the set and correct year. So sometimes the system may generate a 24, 25 right there. They should select 25, 26 for the next academic year, which is starting this fall, and that'll be their freshman year. Students will have to then go ahead and hit next and proceed to the application. These are just some quick reminders, complete an online application, to review information, that you may be subject to submit additional information based on your answers and questions, things like that. So here is the first page of the TAP application. As you see, that date of birth in the middle of the page is grayed out. It can't be changed. So if the student notices here that is wrong, the student can actually delete their HESC account and create a new one with the right date of birth. That's what they can do. Here, they're going to ask some pretty basic questions, but they have some weight. Like one of the questions is, do you live in New York State all of the 2023 calendar year? Now, if the student hits no to that, they're going to be subject to a residency review. So they should make sure that they hit yes, because based on the date they put in, they're going to be subject to a residency review to make sure that they've been here for an entire year. Students should know when it comes to residency, it's not just about being here for a year. Okay, a lot of times students will say, well, I got here in September of 2023 or 2022, whatever it is, and why am I not a resident? Well, one, do your parents live in New York? If you're a dependent student and your parents don't live in New York, you're not a resident of New York. Another thing that we look at when we send out the residency questionnaires is that the student is trying to make New York State their permanent home. So residency is, this is my home of residence. So if the student has been here for 3 years but still has an Oklahoma license, that does not show us that you're trying to be a New York State resident. If they've been here for 3 years and haven't filed taxes here ever, don't have any public assistance from here, are living in an apartment that is right next to the college and is they're only there for certain times of the year, that does not constitute residence, right? So be aware that we're looking at actual residency, like do they get filed taxes here? Do they have a license from here? Are they in an actual apartment that's not off campus housing? Like that's different than renting an actual apartment. Okay, so those are things we're looking at for residency. Another thing that you'll see is citizenship status. We're asked about that. Now, HESC does verify citizenship status using FAFSA and Social Security Administration. So if by some reason maybe a student was a permanent resident forever, and now they are a U.S. citizen and they have SSN, if that change hasn't been done in the Social Security Administration, they may be asked to send in that U.S. passport or that documentation to signify their U.S. citizenship. Okay, so be aware of that. The next thing the student will have to do is select the college. Now, I get this a lot. Why can we only add one college? Is that a mistake? No, it's not a mistake. For our TAP application, you can only add one college because that is the one college that gets payment. So the college that's on the application gets the actual TAP grant payment for the student, which is why we only allow one college to be on here. Now, this college can change at any time. So if a student decides in August, you know what, I was going to go to SUNY Oswego, I'm going to go to SUNY Binghamton now. If that's the case, they can always go back in, even throughout the semester. So if they forget until the last day of the semester, they may have some other issues, but they can go back in, change the college for the fall, and then that payment will be sent out to that school. All right. So they should make sure that at any point in time, they should know they can change their college once the application is processed initially. Okay. There's a whole way they can do that without having to go through the whole application again. We have a specific place on our website where they can go in and just change their college code. And I'll show you that at the end of the presentation. So they can hit search on the college code, on the college area, select, enter any information they want to search. They can put CUNY, SUNY, they can put the college name, hit search, and then select the college from the drop down that's there from the list that populates. Students can then also pick their terms. So they go in fall, spring, and then the next year they'll have winter as well. There is winter TAP as well, so students can do winter term as well. But they'll set the terms right there. They'll then be asked to enter the student ID number for that school. If they don't have it yet, that's okay. There is a box that says, I do not have my student ID yet. They'll click that box and move forward. They will need to enter a student ID before payment is sent out to the school, right? So we do school payments to the school. We don't do them based off just name. We do them based off a student ID. So we can't send a payment out until the student ID has been entered. So students, as soon as they get that student ID, should be aware they need to go back in and update that college information. If it's after the college code, the student ID has to be updated also. The student will continue to enter marital status. So most of your high school seniors are going to be single, never married, and they'll not want to worry about entering a marital status date. Students should really make sure to try to enter information to every field unless it's grayed out, like enter information in, like blank information can hold up the application. So make sure like this is going to be grayed out, but there's some places that won't be grayed out that they should put some kind of character or number to signify whatever they need to signify. The next piece is dependency status. So now we're looking at financial independence. This is what we're going to figure out if the student needs to add parent information to the application. So if a student says, are you claiming financial independence? And they say yes, they will skip the parent portion of the application and be able to submit it. We do review all financial independence manually. So financial independence needs documentation for students under the age of 22. There needs to be documentation because they need what's called a special condition in order to be declared financially independent. So until we get that documentation, until we are able to verify that, the application will not process, like continue processing until we're able to verify that. And then once we verify that and able to push them through, then everything else will take place. We have had students have to go back. A lot of students think they're independent and they're not, right? So students that think, well, I live by myself, or I pay rent, that doesn't mean that you are an independent student. That means you're independent at the moment, but you're not an independent student. I always say if you were to lose it all today, if you were able to go back home, you're likely not an independent student. You're likely a dependent student. Okay. Um, so students, if they're in foster youth, a ward of the court, or orphan after 13, they should select yes there, because they'll get another box that pops up with a link to an OCFS document. This document is a way for those students to apply for additional funds that is available for foster youth in care. Okay, that were in care. So they should make sure to take advantage of those extra funds, because college is expensive and any extra money counts. These are the basic conditions for independence here. So if a student says, I want to be independent, they have to meet these basic conditions, and I'll break through each one of these. Plus, they must also have a special condition. Now, these basic condition questions are all about the biological or step parents. So if a student is in a legal guardianship, uh, their legal guardian is their aunt, their uncle, their grandma, their cousin, whatever, their brother is a legal guardian, whatever it may be. If that's the case, the students should answer no to these, because they're not being cared for by their biological step parent. So be sure they understand that, because some students that have legal guardianship are always fill out the application based on the legal guardian, without understanding that they don't have to do that, because the legal guardian is not their actual parents or step parent. So the first one is, am I claiming as a dependent by either of my parents? Right. So once again, legal guardianship said no. If they claim as a dependent on their taxes, they should hit yes. Most students should hit yes. If they do, you live in an apartment, house, or building owned by your parents. Now, even if the student pays rent in that apartment, they still live in an apartment owned by their parents. Even if they pay rent in the garage, they pay rent in their parents' duplex that's in the city. If they pay rent in their parents' apartment building that the parents own, anything that the parent owns, leases, right? If they're in that building, they should hit yes there. Okay, paying rent, even if you do pay, $1,900 in rent, you're still in your parents' area. And then gifts or loans, $750 or more. So this is not just school gifts or loans. This is not just helping them pay for school. This is not tuition money. This is gas money. This is buying them a car. This is paying for groceries. This is paying for utilities. If the parents are doing that, giving students money for groceries, utilities, giving students money for their phone bill, buying them cars, buying them car repairs, things like that. That constitutes in that 750 of gifts or loans from parents. So students have to be really careful to understand if they're dependent or not. And if they are independent, we'll push them through. If we find out they are dependent, they will have to come back into the application and add the parent information. These are some other special conditions that students can have if they're 22 or younger. They'll have both parents are deceased or totally disabled or declared incompetent. So it could be a combination of those. So one parent can be deceased, one parent can be incompetent, like things like that. If they're in foster youth, ward of the court, or orphan after 13, they can hit that. If they're getting public assistance, not as a dependent of their parents and not SNAP, then they can select that. And that last one is much like the unusual circumstance question on the FAFSA, involuntary dissolution of family. So they're in a war-torn country. They've had to leave home due to safety issues. They've been kicked out of the home. They've been estranged from their parents. The parents abandoned them. Things like that will constitute involuntary dissolution. And once again, it can be a combination. So one parent could be deceased, and that's been the parent they've been with their whole life, and then the other parent they don't know about, right? That's involuntary dissolution, right? They can do both, and we'll need documentation on both. We do have a brief training specifically on special conditions, special circumstances, independence, income adjustments, and things like that on the new special circumstances module that just went live last week or earlier this week. So if you have a student that's in this case or in this area and they're going through this, you don't know what documentation they may need, you can head to that page and it'll get you exactly what you need to help that student with that special circumstance. We have some information for FAFSA and some for TAP. I'm dropping a link down there in the chat where you can find that FAFSA ready training, as well as the special circumstances specific training. Like I said, everything needs documentation. So if a student is independent, their legal guardianship will need the court documentation. If they are ward of the court, we'll need some of that documentation. So anything like that will need documentation sent to us through the uploads to help that student process the application seamlessly. Dependent students will then have to provide parent information. The student is independent, they're going to skip this whole portion here. So we start out by answering questions about the student's parents' marital status. If a student leaves this blank, the application will not process because we don't know what parents to look at. So if they put married or remarried, but then the marital status date is blank, we won't know, is the parent remarried? Is they married? Are they married? When did that happen? And then we won't be able to process the application. We need the actual date of the marriage, the remarriage, the separation or divorce, the date that they were deceased. Right? We need those dates in there for the application to process. Students often leave that blank, right? Thinking that it's inconsequential, but it is, right? We really do need that information to know who to look at or even how to adjust their application, right? We're looking at 2023 taxes. If the parents were divorced in 2024, we'll need both parents' information, but then we'll be able to prorate some of the information and remove some income for that student so that we can get a better picture of the actual family circumstance at the moment, right? So remember, this is as of today. So if a parent was remarried in 2024, right, even though we're looking at 2023 taxes, if they're remarried in 24, that would mean that there's a new person in the home that's contributing. So as of today, are they married? Yes, we're looking at both income. Even if they weren't together in 2023, it doesn't matter. As of today, they're together, they're both in the home. So we'll add that income. And if they were divorced, we'll take away some of the income, right? So it goes both ways. We do allow for adjustments. I did mention that for divorce and separation of parents, we allow for adjustments on a death of a wage earning parent, and we allow for adjustments for parents who are now totally and permanently disabled. We do also allow for like IRA rollover. So if the students' parents have just gotten a new job and there's a 401k rollover that sometimes reflects in the taxes, it'll show up in the application. If we get the right documentation, we can remove that IRA rollover from the calculation. So this doesn't affect the student's aid at all. We'll be asking the parent about some tax information. So we need the tax filing status. So they can enter will not file. They can enter IT 201 or IT 203. Now, if they enter IT 203, that's going to be another thing that will generate a residency questionnaire because that means that parent was not in New York State for the entire year. So we're going to look for that information, okay? If the student will not file, parents will not file or did not file, um, they're going to have a chance to enter any unreported income on the application. So we need to verify income whether they filed a tax return or not. We have to verify income. So we'll be asking for a tax transcript or return transcript from the IRS or New York State. If they didn't file, it'll be a letter saying that person didn't file, and then we'll ask for some other statements to help verify income. But the tax return transcript is the easiest way for us to verify income or non-filing status. If there was some income, right, we'll ask about the filing status. So whether single, had a household, married filing jointly, married filing separately. This is also important. So that's why we ask for the student to have the tax return on hand because we'll need to know the right filing status. If we give tax and finance the wrong one, we won't be able to verify their income, and that will create a hiccup and it'll create some delays on the application. So make sure to enter the correct return status, single, had a household, marital, and then the date, the name, and the social security number of that parent or tax ID number of that parent. It should be entered like it was under 2023 taxes. So there may be times where between 2023 and 2025 that we're in now, a parent might have changed their name, but they got married in those last few years. Maybe they got citizenship and changed and updated their name. There's other reasons why people change their names. If that has happened, they should go by the name that's on the 2023 taxes. That's what should be put in here because that's what we're sending to the Department of Tax and Finance to verify their income information. Okay. If the parent doesn't have an SSN or a TIN, there is a separate box for them to click that they don't have a TIN or SSN. Okay. They should enter then here their net taxable income from line 37. Make sure they're entering that in. Now, if this is incorrect, I get this a lot, like, oh no, I entered 46,000, it should have been 36, or you know, I entered 500,000, it should have been 50. Like, oh no, like there is a lot of angst when it comes to this specific question and entering income. Now, the estimated award that students will get after the TAP application processes will use the number that is inputted by the student. As the process continues and we verify income with tax and finance, this number will be automatically updated if it's incorrect, for better or for worse, right? So remember, this taxable income, we also look at pension income, unless it's disability pension, look at unemployment income. All that is also put into the calculation for student aid, right? So you may see that there's a higher number on there than the number that was put on, or you may find there's a lower number. But don't sweat it. Have students that take it easy. If they put the wrong number in here, we verify all information for tax and finance, and they will put the number in for us, right? So if it's 500,000 and tax and finance says, nah, that's wrong, it's 50,000, they will do that on your behalf, okay? Once the student's application has been submitted, um, they can no longer go back in and adjust their income. Only we can do that, right? So we need a tax transcript to verify their income, or Department of Tax and Finance will do that for us. Okay, so don't worry if they put it wrong here, it's okay. We'll change that later down the road. And then in this section, we'll ask again about parent disability, which parent was disabled, or who's disabled, and when that happened. Once again, if you put that in, they need to put the date in there. Okay, the date has to be in there for that disability. Now, if the parent maybe is on a workers' comp case and hasn't been verified as disabled yet, right? They haven't gone through the doctor's evaluation to be verified as totally disabled. They'll have to wait till they get that paperwork and documentation from the doctor, and then we can go ahead and put that in and update that. All right. If they have Social Security disability already, they can use that as a way to get that as well. So that's all the parent stuff. So if the student was dependent, they would have had to fill that out. If the student's independent, they would have skipped all that and arrived right here at student information, where the student begins to put their income information in. So if a student got a YouTube channel, student is on Instagram, getting sponsors and whatnot, then they might have some income that they can put in that they file for. If not, they can hit will not file and continue and add any unreported income. If they did file, they'll have to enter that information just like their parents did. So nothing different than the parents there. As we start to wind down the application, this is the part where they'll be able to enter if they have other siblings or family members in college. We use this data to increase the student's award. So if there's another family member in college full-time, we're able to give a slight bump to that student's award. We do verify these other family members in college and verify that they're full-time status. So sometimes that doesn't work automatically. We do it automatically, but sometimes it doesn't work for whatever reason through the NCAA clearinghouse. If that's the case, the student will get a letter around Thanksgiving time saying, hey, we weren't able to verify that other student in college, or you said there was one but didn't enter any information. We need that information to try to run this again. After we run it again, if we still can't find them, or if they don't send us back in, we'll reach out and say, hey, send us a transcript from that student so we can verify full-time status in college. If they don't do that, then their award is going to be reduced by the amount as was increased because of the other family member in college. The last step for the parents is to e-sign or paper sign the application. So that's the two options they have. They can e-sign, they can paper sign. Parents can use their driver's license to have one to e-sign. Sometimes it doesn't work due to DMV server issue, or sometimes based on how that individual got the license, how they filled out that application. If they had some information missing, like a TIN number that's optional, it won't connect because we don't have anything to connect it with. So to make sure that if that happens, it's okay, it's not a big deal, they can just hit cancel here and hit paper, and then they can get a paper signature page. Now, if a student does paper signature page, make sure they download it to their computer or download it to their phone, or if they have to download it to, and don't just try to fill it out and send it in. Because what happens is sometimes they X out of it without downloading it, and when they X out of it, it doesn't populate again in the system. Once you hit paper once, it's done. You can't hit paper again in that space on the application. So This will need to get sent back to us, whether it's through uploads or through mail. I would suggest uploads, just so it's easier that way than by mailing it to us, and it's a little faster through the uploads. If they miss this paper signature, they hit paper, they delete it by accident, whatever the case may be. After we process the initial application and see there's no signature, we'll send an email to come back into the application, and I'll show you where they can get another paper signature page for the student. Here, the student can modify any answers. This is the last chance to modify answers to income or independence, because after submitted, they will not be able to change any income or independence questions by themselves. They'll have to go through our call center, they'll have to go through HESC and submit documentation as to what that change needs to be, okay? The last thing for the student to do is to sign it. Once they sign it, they get a congratulations, the email is complete. They'll get an email confirmation as well saying, here you're good to go. In some cases, we'll need some additional information. Students will be notified via email saying, hey, you're missing something, come back in. We'll say exactly what. We'll say, hey, you're missing something, come on back into the application and fix that. There's a couple ways they can do that. This is their hub. So this is right when they get to Higher Education Services Corporation website. They'll select student account sign in, and this is the menu that they'll see. The additional access area is where they can change their HESC PIN account, email address. They can review their financial information. They can update their college code, upload documentation. They can do that all right under the additional access tab. So if they have to hit review my nearest information, they'll log in and hit details on tap, right? Then they'll be able to review or update information or upload documents there. For students that are missing signature pages or students that have to fill out a residency questionnaire, they'll hit review, update your tap information, and then you'll see here on the right, on top of that page will be the request for information summary of things that they're missing and need to fill out. They can click that, get the new paper signature page, or go right into this residency questionnaire and complete it online. If they do the residency questionnaire, tell them to only do it once, right? Don't do it like every day. They're not done automatically. Somebody reviews those manually every day. So if they do it and then do it and then do it and then do it, they're just going to get the same response over and over again. And it's actually going to push them down in the queue and make it take longer for them to be looked at, as opposed to just staying where they are and letting it just fall where they may. They can also upload documents here. They hit the upload documents feature. They hit that, choose a program, the type of document, signature page, income questionnaire, residency questionnaire. They'll upload that. There is an upload history portion, so they'll be able to see the upload history, what program they uploaded to, what the document type was, and when the receive date was for that document. So when that actually was sent to our upload folder for HESC staff to look at. The update college code is also here. So update college information, this is where the student can enter in their student ID when they get it, or update that college code if they decide to go to a different institution. For you guys, we have a lot of resources available on our FAFSA Ready page. We have video walkthroughs that we're still making even today. We have FAQs that are just answers to questions that you guys have. There's a lot of questions that have been asked that we've been able to answer and update our site with. And then we're having a lot more resources, right? Downloadable resources, checklists, things to give students to help them understand better what FAFSA is, what TAP is, how to make adjustments, how to do that signature page, how to upload a document, things like that, common mistakes that students make, all those kind of things are available on our resources tab, right? So thank you. I'm gonna open up for questions here. What questions do you guys have?